10 a.m. And so we wanted to talk about the latest PPP rollout, and many of us applied for the first round of federal support. I know the Pride Center at Equality Park, we did. And so there's lots of questions because everything keeps changing in regards to the PPP requirements and when to report and can we apply for the new rollout. And so Raylan, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you introduce our first speaker.
Well, I will give him a very brief introduction, so it will, because we're tight on time for this and there is so much to say. Mr. Joey Epstein, he is a principal with Morrison Brown, Arges and Farah. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. He is a trusted advisor to us at NLI and a friend, and he always knows his stuff. He is someone in the community that's very active, very civic minded on a lot of boards, and he is on top of all things PPP. So we know the new PPP round is out. There are a lot of things that feel similar but different. So what Joey has offered to do for us today is share some highlights, about a quick 10-minute overview of what they see. We'll probably have to go more in depth at another time. But Joey, feel free to add to your bio. I don't think I did you justice with all the amazing things you do at your place of work and in the community. But Joey Epstein, please take it away. I see you. You're on mute right now, Joey. Let's unmute yourself. With your very cool glasses. You always look cool. That is what I forgot to add to the bio. He always looks cool, guys.
These are my Al Roker glasses in orange, for those of you that watch today's show. So morning, everybody. I know many of you here. For those that I don't know, I'm a principal at MBF. My firm is merging or combining with the national firm BDO on Saturday. So next week will be the same with a different letterhead. A conversation for another time. Right, and I'm involved. I'm probably on 6 boards now, audit committees, but it's not important. You can always put my bio online. Anyway, Raylan says, on top of it, an expert. Well, right now, this, as everybody would assume, they don't know already, we're still waiting on a lot of new regulations regarding PPP second draws. We're still waiting for some on first draws. So what I'm going to try and do here is just kind of touch on a bunch of points in the short time I have. I apologize in advance. I won't be able to stand for questions, but I do have a handout that which is really a little summary as to where we stand today that Raylan will distribute after the presentation or after your meeting today. So the second draw loan, the new PPP loans, the application should be out soon. There are not applications out for, basically most businesses and commercial businesses. They were just released, but only for community financial institutions. They haven't given us a date where the new applications are going to be released. If you're in touch with your banks and lenders, just stay in close contact with them. What I can tell you is all applications will need to be done by March 31st or until the funds are exhausted. Even last time they thought everybody was in a rush and the funds really were never all used. They anticipate that the funds will be exhausted pretty quickly here. So I don't want to push this off to next month, which is February. So as soon as you see the application released, and if you're looking to apply, get done quickly because we do think that the funds will be a little bit scarce as you get to the end of into March. A couple points that came out of this. For those of you that had first draw loans, the IRS originally said that any expenses that you paid with the use of those proceeds were not going to be deductible, which really was not the intent and would have made basically the proceeds taxable. They fixed that. So now as we're going into the preparation of 2019 returns or 2020 returns, the expenses that you pay with proceeds of those first draw loans are deductible. For those of you that have loans under $150,000 first draw, there's going to be a 1-page forgiveness application. So I think it's been released prior now. will be relevant if you're under 150. It's not guaranteed that the amount will be forgiven, but it's going to be a simple application from what we've been told, and there won't be any documentation required. So it's probably going to be just a lot of answer questions and sign some type of affidavit would be my guess. With the new loans, there's some types of entities that are not qualified, public companies, lobbying entities, and a handful of others, but I wouldn't think that that really affects most people here. The second draw loans are still going to be 2.5 times, basically calculated the same as the last time around. It's going to be 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost. What they have done is included in payroll costs are things like in addition to group life disability, which were included before, they've added some other direct type of payroll costs, and then you'll see that in the summary when you get it later. And I'm sorry if I'm going quickly, but hopefully you'll a couple points that you're interested in will catch your eye, and you'll see the summary after the meeting. Other qualifying costs, if you remember on the first PPP loans, it was rent and utilities and some other items. Uninsured property damage costs are included now, covered worker protection costs, software, cloud computing. So there's a handful of other things now that'll qualify, but the 60-40% will still be in place. So at least 60% will have to be payroll costs. What we do know about the second draw loans is that you're going to have to show that your gross receipts for any quarter in 2020 are at least 25% less than for the same quarter in 2019. You have some benefit if you have a smaller business and really don't generate quarterly financial statements. You'll be able to provide bank statements from both years that would reflect that reduction. If you're able to file your 2020 tax return by the time you apply, but that's going to be tough. They'll take the 19 and 20 tax returns and just work off the gross revenues off those returns. So you have a couple ways around the quarterly statements, but if you generate quarterly statements, it'll probably be pretty easy at least to supply that information with the new applications. The new loans are capped at $2 million, $4 million for affiliated groups. We're $10 million in the first round. They've moved the employee in the first round. If you had less than 500 employees, now it's if you have less than 300 employees. Again, doesn't affect a lot of the people we deal with day to day. You don't have to have your forgiveness on your first loans done in order to apply for the second loans. So as you know, the period for the first loans expired, assuming you were on a 24-week period and you did it last year, but you don't have to file the forgiveness application for quite some time still. So you don't need to have filed that forgiveness application in order to apply for your second loans. And if you apply for a second loan with the same lender you applied with on your first loan, you won't be required to provide all the detailed payroll information that you had to do with first loans, because those lenders have it already, and the calculations are basically going to be the same in determining the amount of loans. So with that, I hope I touched on some things that kind of caught your eye or ear, but that's all I got for now. Again, you're just going to have to pay attention to when the applications are released and as new things come out. So with that, I get back to you, Raylyn. I mean, I have like a few minutes, but it's not that much.
So Joey, I do have one quick question. So Robert, I hope this is okay. I was hearing some talk that this round of PPP might be more of a look ahead, a projection, where companies could use the money to bring some additional people into the fold or back, versus the first round was a look back. It was based on 2019 or 2020, your quarter one of 2020. Is this PPP can you project, can you add more people than what you had before with this new round of funding, or is it too soon to
I don't know the exact answer to that. I mean, and again, trying to guess or assume is really a bad idea, but I would assume that would probably be correct because, look, they're looking to get people back to work. Remember even the last time, even though it was a look back, which it is on time for the loan amount, you're still able to bring back employees and things like that with your first draws, if you had laid them off. So, that doesn't sound too much different than really where we are now.
Okay, and we know, guys, folks like Joey and his firm are doing hour-long webinars and sessions on this. So this was just supposed to be a tip of the iceberg, a glance, get you thinking. Joey, you stressed with me when we spoke on Monday that these funds could be gone very quickly this time. So operate fast, get it in by February, which you mentioned. So Robert, I'll turn it over to you if we have time for other questions or whatever you'd like to do next.
Sure. Well, Joey, I thought it was very interesting that you pointed out that it may be beneficial for those of us who applied the first time and awarded a grant to continue applying for the second round with that same institution, so that it reduces some of the paperwork that is required. I know that with our financial institution that we received our PPP loan from, just sent a notice yesterday saying, sign up for the alerts, because that's all that they could announce at that time.
And by the way, I not to cut you off, I don't guarantee that because sometimes these lenders are funny because even though the SBA may say something, some people found when they were applying the first time, the lenders themselves had some of their own requirements. But we'd like to think that follow SBA guidelines and not put people through the ringer for duplicative information and things like that. So anyway.
So I know that Mike put your bio in the chat room, and I think we also have a handout that you also submitted that will include in here as well as in a post meeting email that'll be going out. So
yeah, I think you'll find that very helpful. It's only a few pages and it kind of it goes to a little bit more of most of the stuff that we brought up today, but you'll find that helpful. And again, I think most of the main things that, at least if there's something that, that's relevant to you specifically, anybody here, that you'll be able to just get a little more information.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And if after, I know Joey has to leave, but after he leaves, and if there are any other questions, we will get those to Joey and then somehow post a response to those questions so everyone can.
Yeah, and let me close by saying, feel free to, my email will be on bio. Feel free to just drop me an email if you have questions or additional information. I'll at least get you on the webinars that we've been doing, which people have found quite helpful. And there you go.
Very good. Thank you so kindly. I appreciate your skills and expertise, because all of us are very much wondering what we can do and when we can do it, because the information has never really been consistent throughout the first rollout.
Great. And by the way, and short this from Ray Lynn, I might add, but I'll leave that. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so since all of us are here, I'm assuming that none of us won the Mega Millions from last night. So our stress continues. And then I'm going to ask Raylyn to introduce our next guest, Joanna Brandy, because we have, we're going to talk about stress.
We are. Okay, I am unmuted. So you guys, Joanna Brandy is our next presenter. We are switching gears now. So we wanted to touch on PPP and give some highlights, which we thank Joey Epstein for doing. And then now we want to talk a little bit about what's happened from a how we can handle it perspective with the events at the Capitol last week, the ensuing chaos and confusion. It's been a tough year last year, this year starting out difficult. So what we wanted to do first with Joanna is talk about a little bit about the science behind stress. So Joanna Brandy is the CEO of Return on Happiness. That's the name of her company. I love that name, the Return on Happiness, for you corporate folks out there that want to understand what happy employees can do for your bottom line. She can tell you. She is a national speaker, so we're happy to have her with us again. She's an author. And full disclosure, for those of you who, she has been one of our most popular presenters and trainers on leadership at National Leadership Institute for several years. So Joanna Brandy, take it away. Fill us in on the science behind stress.
Okay, I have some slides. So Robert, is there a way that you can allow me to share my screen, or I just click on the button on the bottom? Robert, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Robert.
Randy,
Sorry.
Joanne.
Can I
Joanne,
just,
I was going to say, you should be able to share.
I should be able to share just, oh yes, there it is right there. How do you like that? Okie dokie. Let's go back and let's get to that first slide and start a little slideshow for you. Okay, so I titled this, Where Attention Goes, Energy Flows. We are all glued. We are all wanting to know what's going on. We are all trying to figure out what's next. This has been, COVID was bad enough, but what's going on now is really taking a whole lot of us and sort of pushing us over the edge. So we're all dealing with this. And there's almost something comforting in that. You're not alone. If you are feeling stress, if you are feeling anxiety, if you are feeling anger, no matter what you're feeling, it's important to understand what's going on in your body and perhaps give you some opportunity to make different choices. Happiness is not a state of mind, it's a state of body mind. So it's not, and stress is not a state of mind, it's a state of body mind. So it's, whenever we have an emotion, it affects all the systems in our body. So every time you have a feeling, you're making a chemical. When you're having positive feelings, when you're having feelings of goodness, you're producing the chemicals of calm in your body. So your body is getting all of the benefits of the serotonin that you're producing, or the oxytocin, or the endorphins, or the dopamine, all of the good chemicals that turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. And you may remember from 7th grade biology that the autonomic nervous system in the body has 2 parts, parasympathetic and sympathetic. Dumb names, don't know why, but that's not the point. So we want to turn on that parasympathetic nervous system because that's where our healing lies. That's where our body repairs itself. That's where we get a good night's sleep. That's when we're able to rest and digest. So parasympathetic is the part of the nervous system that we should be in all day long. Unfortunately, in today's world, we're not. When we're thinking, watching TV, watching the news, watching the internet, watching these moving pictures of what's going on, and when we have these feelings afterwards, those feelings of negativities create the chemicals of fear, which are closely related to stress, right? It turns on the sympathetic portion of the nervous system, and it pushes out cortisol, and it pushes out adrenaline, and you'll notice that your heart starts racing. And if you checked your blood pressure at that point, you would notice your blood pressure is up. Those are part of a system that is designed to save us from immediate danger. So if you were there in the Capitol when it was happening, that would be really good, because you'd be blocking out everything else and you'd just be trying to get yourself out of there. The problem with the sympathetic nervous system and the chemicals that it produces, it impacts every single organ in the body. And then we, as human beings who are natural storytellers, we begin to tell stories about that. What does this mean? Where will it go? So what happens is those stories, those initial, we're watching a story, if you will, on the television, we're watching it. And in this case, we're going down the rabbit hole with it. We're going way down the rabbit hole, watching what's going to happen. The negativity begins to take over, and we spiral down and end up being in stress continuously, actually. Ends up being in anxiety continuously, because that's what's happening. We're spinning down. In order to get out of that stress, we have to flip it So we begin spinning in the other direction because those stories spiral the emotions. The important thing to understand is that negative emotions, although they play a very important role in our lives, they add to the stress. So negative emotions play an important role. So when you're feeling angry about what happens, good for a few minutes, good, because that's going to move you to change things. That's going to move you to do something. Maybe it'll put you in a position where you want to donate money or put more goodness into the world to counteract the other stuff that's going on. They ground us in reality. They get us out of danger really fast. They focus our attention because while we're feeling a negative emotion, shuts down the neocortex of the brain, and all we do is focus on what's wrong in the environment, which is very important when you are in that dangerous situation. Not so important when you're watching it. So they're a really important part of the human experience, but we have to balance that with positive emotion. And it's not a 1-to-1 balance. It's actually a 3-to-1 or 5-to-1 balance. So if we want to balance the negative emotions, we need more positive emotions, because too many negative emotions can cause that stress, can put us in that fight or flight response, and do all those things I mentioned before, including affect our immunity, which is a really important thing to remember. So for those of us, and I'm part of the crowd, although I spend less time than I used to, it's intriguing to see what's happening. It's upsetting to see what's happening. We feel like we need to know what's happening. The reality is we don't need to know as much as we think we need to know. So my suggestion, and before anything else, is to turn off the TV. If you find yourself sitting there, sit for a few minutes, realize you can't do much about it. And when you see the same pictures coming back again, it's time for you to get up, because what you're doing is you're reinfecting yourself with these chemicals of stress. Your heart rate's going up. And then what begins to happen is you don't sleep well. And when you don't sleep well, your body can't repair itself at night. So it's a contractive state. So there are many things that you can do to shift yourself over. You can go to gratitude. You can go to, you can think about the things that are going on well in your life. Negative emotions are going to shut your immune system down for about 6 hours. Positive emotions can build that immune system. So it's really important at this time to be aware that the more you pay attention to the negativity that's going on in the world, that's the way your energy is going to flow. It will ultimately hurt you. So as you're sitting and thinking about it, oh, I know I have to watch it. I have to see what's going on. I have to know. See if you can talk to yourself a little bit. See if you can talk yourself down from that a little bit. You want to name the emotion you're feeling, and then you want to reframe it. You know, maybe what's happening is absolutely necessary for us to get to the point where we really want to be, for us to get to what we really thought our nation was about. Frame it any way you need to frame it that will move you into a positive state and give you hope. Hope is a very important emotion right now to be paying attention to. So you want to have that feeling of we're going to work this out. We're the greatest country in the world. We can do this. This is a challenge, but it's an opportunity for us to show the world how good we really are, how well our system can work. Flip it over and start talking to yourself about why there is reason to have hope. And I know that's difficult to do. It's difficult for me to do, but when you realize that when you let yourself sit in negative emotion, your organs are literally marinating in stress hormones, that changes the way you think about the importance of being informed. So my advice, since I think all of us are trapped in that same loop of what's happening now, I've got to see what's happening now. If you need to keep watching, try not to watch the television. Get your news in watch your favorite newspaper. Don't watch the moving pictures. Read the news, scan it. And then if you really need to feel extremely angry about it, set aside a time. It's actually what one of my teachers does. Between 2 and 2:30, he lets himself feel all that negative emotion. So if you need to have a rant, if you need to let it go, set aside a time and let it go from there, because you want to be building your immune system at this time. So I'll leave you with a thought from both Dr. Wayne Dyer and the founder of quantum physics. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So I don't know if we have time for this, Robert and Raylene. You'll have to give me a thumbs up or whatever. The slide was already in there. Apologize for that. If we have time for questions, I'm happy to take them. I'll leave you my contact information. I'll put it over in the chat box as well. I didn't have a nicely prepared thing the way some of you did. So I'm here if you've got some questions.
Any immediate questions that you have for Joanna, go ahead and ask it now. Otherwise, you can ask it in the chat.
That's good too. Yeah.
So Robert, real quickly, one thing that is, Joanna, you said we need to be sitting in a 5-to-1 ratio of positive
5-to-1
emotions.
ratio. Well, that's for high performance. If you just want to shift it a little bit, you need 3 times. Thank you for bringing that up. You need 3 times more positivity than negativity to balance it out, because we're not designed to have that much negativity in our lives. But if you really want high performance, you want to have a 5-to-1 ratio of positivity to negativity. So first thing is get your gratitude journals out and think about every single thing in your life that you are grateful for. And when you're thinking about it, make sure you're also bringing up the feeling of it. So when you're doing your gratitude journal, you want to be in the emotion of gratitude. That's the fastest shift, is to be in the emotion of gratitude. The other thing is to go out into nature and just really be in nature. Let your mind go, take a walk, listen to the birds, look at the ocean. We live in the most beautiful place in the world. Look at a palm tree. Really, really drench yourself in as many positive emotions as you can to balance out the negative. Thank you, Raylene.
So Joanna, I'm one of those people, when I'm working at home, I have the TV on, the news the entire time, which I should learn from this presentation.
Well, Robert, it's actually affecting your brain when you may not realize it, but it's affecting your ability to be creative, because when we're in a positive emotion, we're 3 to 10 times more creative than when we're in a negative emotion. So if you've got that running in the background, you're being influenced by that. So if you want to really, and check back with me on this, let's see if we can get your creativity to soar just by turning off the TV.
So no wonder my brain cells have been dying off just rapidly lately. So thank you. That's very good advice. Very
And
good
Robert, we
advice.
should probably say we're not telling people to not watch the news.
Yeah, no.
Joanna's saying
No.
in moderation. In
Moderation is a really good word, but most of us are, it's like, you know what, it's become almost like a soap opera where you've got to go over. As you can see, it's an addictive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we just want to break the addiction. I'm not saying don't be uninformed. You just want to break the addiction to having to be informed. Our ancestors didn't have the ability to do that, and they were probably healthier.
Thank you so much. And so when we were, Joanne, Raylene and I were talking about today's meeting, we also wanted to reach out to one of our chamber members, Dr. Andre Caruso, who is a licensed psychologist and behavioral coach. And I asked him if he could just kind of come in and in 10 or 15 minutes, do some group therapy, solve the problems of the world and make us all feel better, which we all know is not a very realistic expectation. But I did ask him to talk to the group and give a little presentation. So Dr. Caruso, I'll hand it over to you for you to do a screen share.
Thank you, Robert. I don't have a lovely presentation like Joanna, so you're stuck looking at my face the whole time. I apologize for that in advance. But thank you for having me so much. Good morning, everyone. Awesome day to all you wonderful folks. So I'm here to speak about things that have been on your TV more this week than The Bachelor. Something more surprising than the Browns scoring 28 points in a quarter and winning a playoff game for the first time in forever. And something more emotional than Alex Trebek's Last Jeopardy show. So those are all 3 things that you could be watching instead of the news. What I'm talking about is the insurrection on the Capitol. And before I do, I just want to give you guys a quick introduction to who I am. And for those of you that might not know me. So I'm Dr. Andre Caruso. I'm your licensed clinical psychologist and behavioral expert. I'm basically a personal trainer for your brain. I am the owner and executive director of the Psychological Health and Therapy Center, which is a private practice that hosts 8 other therapists, ranging in different specialties, modalities, and diversity. So we really like to help people from all different kind of worlds. I am the owner and head trainer, get it, head trainer, of Healthy Mind by Design, a behavioral focused boutique coaching practice, and one half of JB and the Doctor, where we help service professionals and entrepreneurs get to the next level. So go check out our podcast if you need some other distractions in your life. And related to this meeting, I am on the medical advisory board of the Scleroderma Foundation of Southeast Florida. Hi, Fern. I saw you over there. And as my work with the chamber, I'm on the healthcare and small business councils, and also the chair of the Premier Leads group of the Lunch Bunch. And somehow, with all that, I still managed to get about 7 hours a night of sleep, because sleep is probably one of the most important things for our mental health and wellness. And speaking of mental health and wellness, I definitely want to thank Robert and Raylan for having me this morning and focusing on mental health and wellness. This is something that doesn't get a lot of attention, and it deserves it. And I appreciate that spotlight today. So first, and we might see some overlap between mine and Joanna's awesome presentation, because speaking of these events, we're going to talk about emotions. We're going to talk about stress. So repetition's good, and hearing it more than once is probably an awesome thing. So if you see some overlap, please understand that. But the first thing I want to do is just ask you a question, and obviously you don't have to answer this out loud, but think about it in your mind. How did you feel Wednesday when you were learning that this was happening, when you were watching it on your TV or you popped it on Twitter or the news? What was those feelings that you were having? And what were those feelings a few minutes ago when we introduced this topic? Were they the same feelings? Were they different? Did they change? And I would bet most of you probably went through a different range of emotions, right? We had fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, just to name a few. But no matter what feelings or emotions you had during that time, I want you to know that they're all valid. Every feeling that you have is valid. Emotions, they're okay. They what let us know we're alive, good and bad. We want to experience emotions. We want to have these different feelings. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to bury these emotions. We don't want them to take over our day. We want to attend to them. We want to attend to how we're feeling. So allow yourself to sit with these emotions for a while. Allow them to process. Allow yourself to know that it's okay to feel different types of ways about any situation. But what I don't want you to do, I don't want you to obsess. I don't want you to ignore, and I don't want you to invalidate how you're feeling. A lot of our stress comes from bearing these emotions and not dealing with them when they build up. They stack on top of each other. And when that happens, they have no place to go until we explode, one way or another. That's when we see things like anger come out, where people are punching and screaming at each other. Where we see sadness, where we have uncontrollable crying. You ever watch a commercial that's a little bit sad? Like maybe the Sarah commercial with the dogs, sad dogs, and you find yourself like just crying uncontrollably. And you're like, why? I know it's sad, but why am I controlling it? Because your body finally had some emotion come out, and it wanted just to release, and it didn't know when it was going to have a chance to again. So it's just letting it all come out. And that's what leads to severe anxiety. But if we allow ourselves to process those in the moment, or as close to the moment as possible, we have much more control over them. And then we get to stay regulated, and regulated emotions are actually quite helpful. So going forward, please allow yourself to feel whatever it may be. Process it with your friends, your family, therapist, whoever works best for you. But just make sure that you're processing those emotions. For those of you that have children, this is tricky, right? Be as honest with them as their age allows. Children are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. So we want to make sure that we're limiting their viewing time on the violence part of it. And we don't want them to get overwhelmed by the visuals and the repeated exposure. And the same kind of goes for you, by the way, just like what Joanna was saying. Limit that time. Doesn't mean you turn it off totally, but you do want to limit your exposure, and especially when it comes to children. So I know one question I'm brought here for, and question I get a lot from my clients and patients is, so how the heck did we end up like this? Now, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know certain things about people and behaviors, and some of those were definitely on display here, guys. So I want to just be real clear, not diagnosing anyone. This is not therapy, and I'm not going to delve too much into the political aspect of it. But these things are things that we see a lot. And the most thing that I think stood out this last week is fear and frustration. They're powerful motivators. It may be fear of losing power, fear of losing privilege, or even status. Doesn't matter if these are rational thoughts or if these beliefs make sense. That belief is just powerful. And what we're seeing here is like a cult-like behavior. And that leads to that kind of belief in action. The first is we want a sense of belonging, right? That's where we kind of see this. These people want to belong to something. They had this feeling, that need. As people, we want to belong to things. Think about sports fans, for example. When you're a sports fan, you like the team. You know, it doesn't mean the other people are bad or good. You just have this camaraderie with other sports fans that are on your same team. So if you're a Dolphin fan and you're out in the bar and you happen to see another Dolphin fan, you're automatically connected. And that gives you that sense of feeling. And that's where we see the irrational things kind of happen in sports, right? If you ever watched a soccer or football game overseas, there's riots that come up because people are really passionate about being part of that team and belonging. So what leads to that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior? Well, like all behaviors, they need repetition to take hold. One of the biggest things you need to change any behavior is repetition, doing it over and over again, hearing it over and over again. So when they're being fed the same message repeatedly on every platform they view, they start to believe it. Even the most rational person, and no matter how outlandish the message, if they're hammered with that same message over and over again, they'll start to believe it. And this is known. This is known by advertisers. This is known by news outlets, by marketers. And that's why you hear the same messages. That's why you hear those same taglines. That's why you hear that same rhetoric, no matter who's speaking. And when you start to believe those things motivate your fear. And that can be riled into action, as we saw last week. So if you're constantly told that you're being cheated, or they're coming to take away your things, or you're being invaded, or the resources that you have might be taken away, or other resources that you might learn things from are considered fake news or invalid sources, you feel like you're fighting for your own existence. And that's a lot what we saw, was people feeling like they were fighting for their own existence. Now, very important here, I'm not condoning any of these actions. These statements don't condone any of these actions, nor do they agree with these actions. All this states is that we understand why those actions happen. It's important to understand other people, even or especially when we don't agree with them, when we believe the same way as them. That doesn't mean it's acceptance. It just means it's understanding. Understanding creates empathy. But I want you to keep in mind that not all people that voted a certain way or voted for Trump, they don't all believe these same things. And we have to be careful about putting everyone in the same categories. We are all individual human beings, and putting in people in boxes, that's not helpful for anyone in any setting. Another thing I want you to remember is that while it seems very drastic watching TV or listening to the news and seeing these images, the numbers of the people that were actually involved are just very minuscule compared to our population. So if we put that in context, that's a small percentage of the amount of people in this country. And it gets highlighted because it looks so forceful on TV. It looks like there's so many of them. We're talking about a couple of thousand people in a country of hundreds of millions. And the other thing that kind of highlights that is, the internet and social media has made it easier for those kind of messages to come together. Things that used to be on the fringe, things that used to be on the outskirts. But again, it's just a small percentage of the population. So hopefully that gives some hope that we're not falling down some hole that the whole world is going to implode. It's, if we put it into perspective, it's really just a small percentage. And that happens on social media too. And I just want you guys to think a little bit about that. When you see things on Twitter, when people are rallying up cancel culture, all these things that we see today, it's a small percentage of people that are being that active. The numbers, and forgive me if I'm not exact on some of these numbers, but they're approximately 30% of the country of the world is on Twitter at any given moment, right? And out of that percentage, less than 20% are really, really active. So most of you are not active. We're scrolling, we're looking at messages, maybe occasional like or retweet, but generally not commenting, not engaging a lot. And out of the percentages that do, it's a big percentage out of the fringes. So what's generally less than 1% of the population, really less than like 0.5% of the population, are the ones that are engaging the most. So we see the outliers. We see those fringes are the ones that are posting, the ones that are retweeting, the commenting, showing this hate, showing this this vitriol. But when we put that in context, again, that's a very small amount of people. So let's not make judgments. Let's not change the way we do things because a small amount of people are riled up. It's important to keep that in context. So as you're watching things now, I kind of, as Joanna said, limit yourself within your own reason. We can't give you a number. Everyone's different. You know what you can tolerate and what you can't tolerate. You know you're going to have different feelings at different times. So be aware of that. Be true to yourself. Know that there's going to be a lot of feelings that you've maybe never felt before. Maybe you start wanting retribution or punishment for these people. Maybe these are words that you've never said to yourself before. You've never felt that way. That's okay. Allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to be there, and allow yourself to take breaks. The most important things I want you to remember from today is you don't always have to agree with everyone. And in fact, you won't agree with everyone on everything, and that's okay. Different views, different opinions, it's what makes the world great. But however, having some understanding, some empathy for others, that's really helpful. You don't have to have the same beliefs. You don't have to agree. But if you can understand what they believe and have some empathy for their thoughts and situations, it can go a long way. And most importantly, take care of yourself. Take care of your mental and health and wellness. Process your emotions. Allow yourself to feel. Know that feelings are okay. Your feelings are valid. It's okay to take breaks. And self-care is the number one thing you can do, not only for yourself, but for others as well. It's really, really hard to be helpful for anyone else if you're not helpful for yourself first. So make sure you're taking care of yourself first and foremost. And remember, awesomeness is achieved through a healthy mind. Thank you, guys. Questions if you have.
Andre, I do have a question. This is
Burn.
hi. I'm listening to everything you say, and this empathy, I totally understand, but we have a family member who I love and adore, but I'm so angry right now because he's threatening to leave the country now. And he was raised with all of us, the whole family. He's lives in another area, and his brother won't even speak to him. And it is breaking my heart. How do you deal with it?
It's almost impossible to make sense of that feeling for yourself. But the thing we have to remember is we can't control other people. We can barely control ourselves. And that's what we have to focus on, is how we can help impact ourselves and just be the best us that we can be. So hopefully that others will see that and eventually change their thought pattern. That family member's probably scared and riled up and has all these feelings that doesn't know what to do with, and not thinking rational, and trying to rationalize with them is not going to work. They're just going to shut down even further. They're going to shut you out even more. So when I say empathy, again, it's not to understand or to agree with them, but it's just to understand that they they're going through something, they're feeling different. And these feelings probably beyond their control right now. And the best thing that we can do is just be supportive as we can. We don't want to obviously engage or agree with any of the behaviors that are coming from this. We want to make them know that that is inappropriate and not needed and not wanted. But the empathy, especially on a one-on-one level, especially with family, if you can just show them that you love them and that you're there for them, and if they change their mind, they change their mind. If they don't, that's still on them. You can't do anything about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre, for your coaching, your words of wisdom, and also your ability to maneuver your schedule around to be with us this morning. We felt very strongly that we needed to touch on this and address it in a short amount of time, but at least to acknowledge and help us in any way that we possibly can. So thank you again for joining us this morning, and we really do appreciate your words. And then we've posted in the chat room your information and contact. So if there's any follow-up questions for Dr. Caruso, please feel free to reach out to him.
Please, yeah, anytime. I
Thank you,
appreciate the time. Thank you, guys.
So before we wrap up, we are bringing back up into our agendas the faces behind the mission. We haven't done that in a really long time, and so needing to get back into the routine and the swing of things. So Raylene, why don't you introduce and announce our Faces Behind the Mission recognition?
Well, our final speaker today is Mr. Rick Riccardi. He is the CEO and founder of Fellowship Recovery Community Organization. They've just had a merger, so I want to make sure I say that correctly. Fellowship Recovery Community Organization. He is someone I respect deeply and I admire his work. They do so much good work in our community with substance use disorder, recovery housing, reemployment, counseling, therapy. They are sometimes referred to, and I don't like this part, as a best kept secret of help in our community. So we wanted to feature Rick today in Fellowship Living and have them share as our first 2021 Faces Behind the Mission, Mr. Rick Riccardi.
Hi, thanks, Raylene. Can you hear me okay? Is everything working? Okay, great, thanks. So I was really moved by Joanna and doctor's reports in terms of emotions and how people respond to emotions. And so we're part of the behavioral health industry, and that which includes substance use disorder and mental health. And it all has to do with emotions and getting through certain things to overcome addiction. And in this case, we focus on alcohol and drug addiction. Just a little to lay out the scene. There's 23 million people with substance use disorder in this country, and very few people get treatment for it. Right now, last year, most people heard of the opioid epidemic, and in 2019, last year, we had over 70,000 young people mainly die of overdoses. We've always had an alcohol issue in terms of people dying. We've had over 90,000 people last year die of alcohol-related issues. So it's an ongoing issue behind the scenes. So to set the stage for us locally, for example, last year in Broward County alone, we had 700 deaths as a result of opioid overdoses, mainly young people here in this county. So statistically, if there's, basically 10 to 20% of the people are part of the substance use disorder community. And so that would mean with the 2 million people in our county, there's probably anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 people in our own county who have this issue. And most people know about recovery in terms of layers. They think of detox in terms of people coming to detox to save their life, which is something that physically happens. It's like a, it's a hospital setting, and people stay there 5 to 7 days, and then the threat of death is okay, and they get started. And then they think about treatment, and treatment basically is a result of insurance companies' policies, usually lasts about 30 days and cost $30,000 for 30 days. But only 5 to 10% of the people even can afford to do that type of thing. The rest of the community are the people you see hanging out under the bridge, hanging out, walking around, no jobs, no place to go. They basically have lost all hope. And the only way they feel better, it's part of the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction, is the only way they feel better is to use what's killing them. Basically, it talks about in our literature that we are restless, irritable, and discontent unless we can feel better through using the drug or alcohol. That gives us a sense of ease and comfort. It's a lot like we were talking about, how do you get out of your head for all these emotions? For an alcoholic or drug addict, it's use drugs or use alcohol. It's the way I grew up. It's the way I know. And then dealing with life without drugs and alcohol is tremendous obstacle. So what we do, Fellowship Recovery Community Organization, basically we are an information and resource center that basically helps people find out where to go, for what, how it works, what do you do. And also we have housing, which most people we call that sober living housing, the recovery community recovery housing for people who want to get better. So when people come out of the detox or they come out of a treatment center after using and abusing drugs and alcohol for their life and not knowing where to turn, the thing we need, and the way this all ties in here to this day, is connection. We need to give each other hope that this works, and this is how it works. And there are many paths to recovery, but together, we basically share with each other how we did it and how the other person did it. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I have 26 years free from alcohol, but somebody with 1 day and 5 days may not definitely can't relate to me with 26 years, but they certainly can relate to somebody with 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. Like, how do you do that? So coming together in a community is vital to our recovery process. And when we disconnect, the first thing we do is go back to our old behaviors and our old thinking, and we use drugs and alcohol to get through an emotion, whether it's watching TV or it's something happened in our life and we can't handle it. We go back to that. And so unless we're together connecting and sharing with each other how to get through issues, we're pretty hard to recover alone. So recovery housing and sober living is the answer to a long-term recovery process. Statistics show that it takes 5 years before you have a 85% chance of staying sober. 5 years. We're not talking months, weeks, days of quote treatment. Treatment is just how you do it. It's like reading the cookbook, but never cooking anything. So you have to learn how to live in recovery. You have to learn, and you do that by sharing that with other people. So we ourselves have had over 7,000 people come through our residence. Hold on 1 second here. My battery is dying. Nice. I need to plug that in. Sorry, that's awful, right?
And Rick, we're running out of time here, so we
Okay.
don't want to rush you, but I want you to give your final thoughts before we turn it back to Robert. I'm so sorry.
Okay, final thoughts are, we try to help the community. We try to help people get jobs and everything they need to what we call restore their hope in life, and that's called Recovery Capital. So our main focus is to help people who come in, how to stay sober and have to get jobs and get back in the community. So that's what we do. Thanks.
And I can just share real quickly personally to wrap that up, Robert. Fellowship has an amazing facility set up. The residences are just really impressive if you go there and take a tour. I know all the nonprofits on here do amazing work, and we'd love to feature everybody. but Fellowship really has been sort of quietly doing their work for 20-something years in our community, and we thank you for presenting today.
Yes, thank you,
Thanks for
Rick,
having
very
me.
much.
Okay,
So I know we're a little over time, but I do want to provide the opportunity, as I put into the chat, if there are any openings in your organization that you would like to make known to this community on this Zoom chat. I know Renee, you have one, and Joel, you have one. So Renee.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to let everybody know that Equality Florida is looking for a Broward Development Officer that would be based here in Broward. For information, you can go to our website at eqfl.org/careers, and I have just entered that into the chat. So thanks, Robert.
Thank you. And Renee put his information in the chat. Joel.
Hey everybody, Joel Greenbaum, President and CEO of Executive Service Corps South Florida. Nice to see everybody. Great meeting. Thanks for all the inspiration today. So one of the things that we do is we conduct executive searches on behalf of nonprofit organizations. And I have a couple positions that are open right now. We are working with the Center for Independent Living of Broward, who is looking for a director of